Are you too busy? Too stressed out? Unhealthy? Then this is the place for you. Welcome to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, where we help you create wellness and balance with a holistic approach that will work for you, even with the busiest of schedules, so you can live the life you want. And now, here's your host, Diane Randall.
Hello and welcome. I'm Diane Randall, your host of Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, the podcast that provides the best experts in solo episodes to help you break free from any habits and patterns that may be keeping you stuck in place. Today's episode is all about organizing your to-do list, your priorities, and your schedule in a way that makes your life more manageable. My guest, David Allen, is the author of the best-selling book, Getting Things Done. He's widely recognized as a leading authority on personal and stress-free productivity. On this episode, David talks to me about how you can make it easy to see what you have on your plate and also choose what you need to work on next. He'll also talk to me about how to get your to-dos out of your head and into a system that works for you, so your mind is clear of any mental distractions that will keep you from working efficiently. Hi, David.
Thanks, Diane. Delighted to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I am so happy to have you here. I saw your TED Talk, and it was so interesting. I said to myself, I have to invite this gentleman onto Balanced Living for Busy Professionals, because I love that you talk about things beyond time management, that getting things done is not about time management. That was just so awesome. So I'm just happy that you're here.
Sure. Happy to chat.
So tell us about the basics of getting things done, just in case other people don't know, have read your book.
It's about getting present with everything you're doing in your life. It really is. Getting things done, you know, it was a title that we came up with because in a way, you know, and especially in the early 2000s, that was the key issue for high-level professionals and fast-track professionals. They had so much stuff to do, and they were being bombarded with this new thing called the email flood tsunami. And, you know, how do I stay on top of all that? How do I surf on top of that? So it was about how do you make sure you handle things that you're committed to get things done about. But, you know, over the last 15 years since that was first published, and my new edition sort of reframed that, it's really more about, as you mentioned earlier, how do you get appropriately engaged with your life? And it's not about managing time. It's about managing your focus, managing your agreements, managing your renegotiated commitments with yourself about all of your agreements, so that you can, you know, watch your daughter play soccer on the game without having to be on your iPhone, so that you can, you know, sit down and focus on your next business plan without being distracted by 43 other plates spinning in the air that you haven't figured out what to do about yet. So it's really about how do I surf on top of this game of complexity without having to check out from it.
How does one get started? Do you have any suggestions or methods or principles that you advocate in your book where people should start? Tell us about that.
Yeah, and come on, Diane. This is no different than what you and everybody listening to this has ever done in your life. You're confused. You're out of control. You sit down and you make a friggin' list.
That's right.
You get it out of your head. Your head is the crappiest office in the world. So you know, this is really about getting a much more scientific or a much more refined and objectified version of the value of that, called externalizing your agreements. So, you know, the way you get control of anything is the first thing you need to do is you need to capture the stuff that's not in control or not on cruise control. So you don't have to go very far. Hey, I'll bet a whole lot of people listening to you and me right now, even in these few minutes we've started talking, have had things pop into their mind that had nothing to do with what you and I are talking about. Sure. Right. And that's where you start. Well, why is that on your mind? I need cat food. I need dog food. I need a babysitter. I need to rewrite my business plan. I need to hire an assistant. I need to get a life. God knows all that stuff that pops into our head, that stuff needs to get externalized. And then you need to get, pretty rigorous and apply a personal executive thought process on those things, that you don't have to finish them. You don't have to solve them. You don't have to make them perfect. You don't have to figure out how to do everything about them. You just need to get appropriately engaged with them. And then that gets them off your mind, that then allows you the freedom at any point in time to focus on whatever you want to focus on. And I guess that's the, one way to describe the key benefit of both understanding and applying what I came up with in these 35 years.
So what I hear you saying is, if I'm thinking at this moment, the thought that I need to get a life, what you're saying to me is that's where I need to focus my attention.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's got your attention on it. Why is your attention on it?
Yes.
It's because there are things about that you haven't decided, or you haven't parked the results in some trusted place. So if I said, Diane, okay, you need to get a life or a new version of your life. Great. What's the next action? What's the next thing you need to do? If I'm going to pay you $6 billion right now to move on that, right? What would you do? You've had nothing else to do but that. Would you surf the web? Would you talk to a life partner? Would you, go buy nails at a hardware store? What would you do? What's the next thing you need to do? And because you haven't answered that, is because that's why it's still on your mind and will wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning. So there's some very rigorous, real decisions that you need to make about the things that have your attention that most people have not done and won't do until the crisis forces them to. So that's why I discovered, wait a minute, you don't have to get your life off your mind. You don't have to have it perfect. You just need to decide what's next on this, Diane. What's the very next thing you need to do? And park that in some appropriate place that you'll see at the right time. And also you need to have a project that you need to sort of admit to yourself, I now have an outcome I'm committed to. Go get onto cruise control, my next chapter of my life. Fabulous. Well, that's a project. You put that on a project list. You look at that once a week and go, well, what do I need to do next? What do I need to do next to get that handled? See, Diane, there are no problems. There are only projects.
I like that. So what you're saying is, if it's in my mind, make it a project. What if it's 2 or 3 things that are swirling around in my mind? What do you recommend? Do I do one thing at a time, or do I just try to tackle all these things in a management fashion?
Well, here's the bad news. It's not 1 or 2 things. Most people listening to this have, several 100 things in their mind. I need to buy cat food. I need a new babysitter. I need to rewrite my strategic plan. I need to hire an assistant. I need to handle the next holiday my family and I are going on. I need new tires on my car. My kids want to take a karate class. I don't know what to do about that. This is the stuff that's on people's mind. So the first thing is to get that out of your mind. And that's going to take 1 to 6 hours if you really were going to do that. Most people have no idea how many things they've internally committed to that are banging around inside that pinball machine inside their head. So that's the first thing to do, is just objectify all that stuff. Get a pen and paper, write it down, get all that stuff out of your head. So step 1, that has changed a lot of people's lives, by the way, just that first step. But you can't leave it there. You can't just leave this big to-do list out there. You then have to decide, okay, a karate class for my kids. Then you need to decide, what is your objective about that thing? I need to get that onto cruise control. I need to handle whether I am or am not, or what we're going to do about that to put that onto cruise control. And so you need to make that a project, and then you need to decide the next action. What's the next step on this? Well, I think Bobby down the street, his kids went to a karate class. Let me call Bobby. Great. Now you got to call Bobby action, which is you've now decided what to start to do about this thing that has your attention. So basically that's what puts you in the driver's seat about these things. But that's a huge step, Diane, for most everybody listening to this right now. There are huge amounts of things in their inventory of stuff internally they have not objectified, nor have they decided what exactly do they need to do about that to get appropriately engaged with it.
So am I hearing you saying also that you need to decide what the priority of these projects will be?
No.
No priorities?
Well, no. You're deciding priorities just every moment of the day, just based upon what you decide to do. But making a better decision about your priorities is going to have a lot to do with getting the full inventory of all the things you're committed to.
There you go. Yes. I heard you say in one of your interviews, you said, if you don't like your life, get it off your mind.
Yeah, well, you don't have to like your life to get it off your mind.
Okay.
Right. The things that are on your mind are simply because of decisions you haven't made and your own systematic process you haven't organized appropriately to remind you about the right thing at the right time. And that doesn't mean those are fun things to do. They're easy things to do. It just means, look, this thing is going to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning about it until you make those decisions. And then you don't get rid of challenges and those kind of stresses in your life. You wouldn't grow or expand or express yourself if you didn't have challenge. So you don't want to get rid of challenge. You just want to make sure you're in the driver's seat and not in the victim mode about them. So you need to decide, what is this thing? Why is it yanking my chain? What do I need to create or finish about that, or resolve about that, or clarify about that? And then what's my next step? And those are things that don't show up automatically. They don't show up. You're not born doing that. That you actually have to train that cognitive muscle, if you will, about how to make those decisions. If you saw my TED Talk, I talked about in a crisis, people automatically start to move into those behaviors. They start to automatically decide outcomes and action steps and course correct and refine and put everything else on the back burner. And that gets them in their zone. But again, to my point, you don't have to wait for a crisis to put you in your zone, but most people do. You could live in your zone. You just have to do those behaviors that get you there.
Now, you wrote the book, Getting Things Done, I believe in 2001. Is that correct?
First edition.
First edition. So how has this book evolved in what you've learned over the years that's really, really different with the busyness of life than back in 2001 when you wrote the book? I believe you said you have a updated version of that book now, 2015 or something like that. Can you just share what has changed over the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. Nothing has changed, Diane, in terms of the methodology.
Okay.
Right. So in terms of, look, you got stuff on your mind, get it out of your head, decide action and outcome, park those things in trusted places, make sure you have a review and reflection process that sees the inventory of all of your commitments, on some consistent basis, keep that current. There's nothing changed about that. That'll be true 100 years from now. It was true 100 years ago. So that didn't change. The methodology didn't change. What's changed is how many people need to do that now in a much more consistent basis across the spectrum, as opposed to just high potential fast track professionals. That this was book, back in 2001, that we figured that was our most ripe audience for the book. So it was really positioned that way. But in truth, I even knew it then. This works for students. It's needed. The clergy. You wouldn't believe how many clergy are huge champions of my stuff. They handle the God stuff, but all the rest, they're clueless. And so they love this methodology to be able to handle the rest of that aspect of their lives. So I think a lot of what has changed is the breadth and depth and volume of people that now need to know this.
Okay.
And the examples that I have about how critical this is across your whole lifestyle. And this is not a one-time time management tricks and tips. This is a lifestyle art and craft of how do you manage the flow of life's work? How do you manage the email from your mom, or the WhatsApp, or the text from your mom, or what you see on your social media? How do you manage that? How do you deal with that? So it's really about how do I engage across my whole life that keeps all this stuff in control, or in the sense of control that I feel like I'm on top of it instead of buried by it.
And that's what I like about the Getting Things Done book and method. It's really making everyone, myself, accountable for where we're putting our energy and attention.
Sure.
Versus writing a list that's outside of us and making to-dos of things that we really know we won't get to.
Yeah, but that's why, come on, one of the key lists in my model is someday maybe. You need to make a list of all the, hey, Diane, what are the cool, wicked cool, nifty things you would love to do at some point, but not right now. You have the either energy, attention, interest, or resources to move on them, but you don't want to lose those ideas. My someday maybe list is much longer than my project list. All the way cool things I might want to do, hike over the mountains in New Zealand. That's on that list. Take a balloon ride, somewhere with champagne and, have fun doing that. Those things are on my someday maybe list. And those are a whole lot of what I'm doing in my life started out on my someday maybe list. So that's a very valuable and viable, thing to keep track of and to be aware of and objectify. What are the things you might want to do, but not now? But you need to make that clear. Might want to do, but not now. And that's a creative and a clarifying decision you need to make about all those things banging around in your head. Are you truly committed to move on it right now, or not? So a whole lot of people, most people listening to this probably have a lot of stuff piled up in their in baskets, physical in trays, or their digital in trays in terms of their email that they haven't decided, is that something I need to do about or not?
So how do you recommend, that's true for everyone, especially busy professionals, that inbox. So how do you recommend we tackle that inbox?
Well, in my book, sorry, here's a sleazy promotional.
Oh, that's okay.
Jab. And I said, look, I described the algorithm or the formula. You need to take each email and ask yourself very specific questions. First of all, what is it? Are they asking me to do something? What is this thing? And then, is it an actionable item? Yes or no? If it's no, then it's either reference, trash, or on hold. And there are ways to deal with those, given what those things might be. If you say, yes, there is something to do about it, you need to decide two things. First of all, what's the very next action I need to take on this? If this is something I need to do something about, what do I do? Do I need to just respond to this email? Do I need to make a phone call about this? Do I need to surf the web about something about this? And so making that decision, and then if that one action won't finish whatever this is about, determining what the project is. So the determination of outcome and action are the zeros and ones of productivity. What am I trying to do, and how do I allocate resources to make that happen? Those decisions, most people do not make. Most people have not been trained to think down at that discrete level about their stuff. And so they just let it pile up. Go, that's a big huh. And so they open it up and then they close it up. But they know there's still something they need to think about or decide about or to figure out what about that is. So I just figured out, what specifically do you need to think about and decide about those things? And so, you need to apply that thought process. Once you do that, then you need to build a personal system that lets you organize the results of those things if you couldn't finish them in the moment. And by the way, the 2-minute rule, which anybody listening to this, if that's all you get out of this, is worth listening to this. If you haven't built that habit already, any next action you need to take about anything, whether it pops into your email, whether it pops into your head, if you could actually finish that in 2 minutes or less, you should actually do it right then, because it would simply take you longer to track it and review it than it would be to finish it in the moment. So the 2-minute rule, applies a lot to, how do I process this stuff that's landed in my life? And if not, then you need to decide, okay, can I hand this off to somebody else? In which case you need to delegate it. If not, then I need to park it in my inventory of reminders of stuff I need to do. When I go to the store, here are all the things I need to buy. When I talk to my life partner, here's all the things I need to talk to him or her about, to move forward our business of life stuff. So basically it's about, dealing with the stuff that lands in your world, deciding what it means, what you're going to do about it, if anything, and then park the results someplace that you trust. Awesome. But that doesn't show up, Diane, automatically. You weren't born doing that. You have to learn that. If you're not doing that already, it'll only happen when a crisis or when the pressure forces you to make those decisions. And so I just figured out, hey, you're gonna have a much greater life if you do all this stuff on the front end when it first shows up, as opposed to when it blows up.
And most of us, especially busy professionals, people in general, we don't learn this stuff.
No,
we don't learn this stuff when we first start our careers, early careers. We have no idea. We just feel like we're just in that moment doing what we have to do until we get to a point where we're stressed out. We don't have enough time. We find ourselves working 12, 14 hours a day just to clear things up, but it never happened. So this getting things done system is very helpful. It's like you said, it can change lives. So if anyone's listening, where can they get your book?
Anywhere books are sold.
Anywhere books are sold.
Yeah.
Okay. Is it online?
There's an audio version of that.
Oh, I love audio.
Listen in your car if you want to.
Yes. That's
and the new edition is worth getting. It's, I rewrote it. I literally, last year sat down and rewrote the book and said, okay, how would I now write this given what I know, in 2015, 2016? And so I would highly recommend that for sure. That has all this. And by the way, it is potentially overwhelming. So, let me just tell everybody, relax. I just described this whole manual about if you were really going to try to manage your life from this perspective, here's all the things you would probably need to do. But it could take 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years to build a habit of doing these kind of behaviors. They don't show up automatically. They'll show up in a crisis, but to do them proactively when you need to and when it makes the most sense to do it, that's something that actually you need to train yourself to do and build a bit of a habit about. And
it's just small steps, steps with small actions, one step at a time, and things evolve over time. You talked about messy being productive.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, come on. Come on, Diane. Do you like to play in your kitchen?
I don't like to play in my kitchen.
Okay. Well, where do you like to play?
Project
thinking, party thinking. Where do you like to play?
I'd say.
How do you like to play?
I like to party thinking. Sounds good. I like that. Yep.
Well, wherever you like to play, the more freedom you have in a clean space to allow yourself to go crazy and get out of control, it's probably your most productive state. That's where you have the greatest ideas. Oh my God, we could do this, they could do that, whatever. But if you're in a mess, you can't make a mess. So if you just finished 2 parties that are totally out of control, you can't clean up. They're overwhelming. You can't even move outside your living room because of the last 2 parties and all the crap they created around you. Try to think about the next party. Good luck. Right. So you need to have a clear space in order to create a creative space. So, most artists, most creative people, need to get a clean and clear space first to then give themselves the freedom to let themselves get out of control. And that's, I think, a lot of what if you will, the zen of this is that you need to get in control so you can get out of control. But if you're out of control, it's hard to do that. You don't have the freedom to do it. It's yanking your chain. You don't have the freedom to expand into new territory and be creative.
You've certainly given us a lot to change in our lives for the better. I recommend that you guys buy the book. I will have David Allen's book links in the show notes so that you can easily find the book if you're interested in the Getting Things Done method. And David, I want to thank you for being here, sharing your insight and your wisdom in this area. Hey,
my pleasure, Diane. Thanks for the invitation. Happy to share this information with everybody. Come on, this is going to improve everybody's life. Any part of this, any tiny little bit of this, it doesn't hurt. You're not running with scissors here. This is it's great stuff. And actually, it's just reminding people about stuff they actually already do. So it's not learning some new technology or some new foreign language. It's just reinforcing the behaviors you're already somewhat familiar with, but to do them in a much more elegant and complete way. And that is transformative.
It's transformative. And as you know, with behavior change, we need reminders every day.
Yeah, me too. You bet.
Thank you so much for being here on Balanced Living for Busy Professionals.
Thank you for listening to Balanced Living for Busy Professionals. This podcast is sponsored by DianeRandallConsults.com. If you like this show, the best way to support it is by leaving 5-star feedback on iTunes. And please feel free to email your questions, comments, and suggestions to feedback@DianeRandallConsults.com. Until next week, namaste.